boosting the Anfield capacity to around 54,000 people. It was viewed as one half of a two-phase plan, which would see an extra 5,000 seats added at the Anfield road end. But doubts were expressed earlier in the season that if seat prices remain low, it might not be cost effective. Today, the Reds' chief operating officer Andy Hughes told the Liverpool Echo that the club expansion could be back on the agenda. Well, I've been speaking to football finance expert Kieran Maguire from the University of Liverpool's School of Management. I put it to him that the demand seems to be there, but with no more hospitality areas, do the sums add up?
I think a lot will depend on whether Fenway want to look at it from a point of view as an investment or from a love affair. And those are the two ways that we look at football. They're not going to get the money back as quickly as they would have done from the main stand because of the advantage of having the hospitality areas. Certainly looking at the article in the Echo, it does appear that they might be trying to find some form of compromise. I think the big issue for them is if it's going to cost 45 to 50 million pounds, how long is that going to take to get the money back?
But surely in this day and age in football, the amount of money being ploughed into the game and into clubs like Liverpool, they're going to get, they're getting that much money from telly anyway, aren't they? Does it really matter?
Well, it does to a certain extent, because although the money's coming in, it's also going out fairly quickly at Anfield. So to give you an example, the wage bill last season went up by £42 million. So that was more than the increase in the TV money. Now, admittedly, the club did have some success in Europe that year, but I can't see the wages going down. They spent over £100 million on players. So there's various pots of money, I think, that the club look at, and they will have a playing budget, and they'll try to allocate as much money as possible to that, because from a fan's point of view, ultimately what you want is success on the pitch, and sort of the development of the infrastructure does become a secondary issue.
Liverpool, and I guess Everton as well, in looking at their new stadium as well, have got to be conscious of ticket pricing, haven't they? Perhaps more so than a lot of the London clubs who have all got, fairly big stadiums now in the Premier League.
That's right. Having said that, Liverpool are very good from a financial point of view at extracting money from fans. I mean, we've done some research at the university, and Liverpool generate the third highest amount of cash per fan. That comes in at around about £1,420. Now, Arsenal are make over £2,000, but most of the provincial clubs are on a fraction of that. But I think Liverpool are a unique case because they do have this global appeal, and what they don't want to do is to disenfranchise the local support who won't necessarily have the same degree of wealth as the football tourists.
But when you look around and you look at Old Trafford, you look at the Etihad, of course West Ham are in a new stadium now, no matter what you think of it. Spurs are building one, Chelsea are building one, Liverpool can't stand still, can they?
No, and certainly Anfield is already improved with the changes that have come through this year. But Liverpool generated £62 million worth of money from fans last season, but Arsenal, it was 124. United was 106. And if the club want to compete on the pitch, then they've got to ensure that they've got as many sources of revenue as possible to make sure that we can keep up with the Joneses, because ultimately you want to be winning trophies and getting the other lot down the A580, put them in their rightful place.
Spoken like a fan. Do you think that in order to comply with provision of disability spaces, which means the loss of around 1,000 seats, will Liverpool be forced into action because of that?
Well, yes, I think that's going to be a temporary issue, but it's right and proper that all fans and in terms of accessibility are unable to see their team. I think the club are also trying to expand things at the COP itself. There's a few areas where they can squeeze in a few extra seats. But they've got to look at the whole picture and make sure that all fans of all backgrounds are entitled to get to the matches, and that potentially is going to cost them a few pounds here and there.
And I guess anything like this, no matter who the club, so again, this is regards Everton as well, is a certain there's a bit of a gamble here, isn't there? Because if form were to tail off, if the team did suddenly go down the pan, then obviously people are less inclined to go and watch them.
They are, but I think most fans are fairly forgiving on a short-term basis. If you take a look at Newcastle United, who are relegated to the Championship this season, they've still managed to average more than 50,000 in the Championship. Now, that wouldn't necessarily last if Newcastle were in the Championship in 4 or 5 years' time. For a club of the stature of Liverpool to be flirting with relegation, it's a remote risk, but it's something you have to take into consideration. We live in such an unpredictable world. Chelsea were sort of flirting with relegation last year. No one would have expected Aston Villa and Newcastle to be relegated in the same season. So it's something which you have to bear in mind, especially if you are having to borrow the money in the first place, because the guys that are lending the money do take these things very seriously.
Your station